So this is all palace down here. Yeah. Okay, everybody. So, the Roman Forum. The Roman Forum is all the rubble down here. Now, the Roman Forum sprung up because Romulus founded Rome in 753 BC. He's sitting on his hill here, the Palantine, and he obviously wants to develop his city. So he looks around and he sees 6 other hills with little tribes on. He thinks, well, if I can invite these tribes into my town, then actually I'll expand and populate the city at the same time. So this is why I've got the same Rome as what the 7 hills. Now, of course, what happens is years go by, and yeah, everyone's living in Rome, but everyone's sitting on their own hill with their own tribe, because there's nowhere for them to mix. So they decide what they want to do for it. Forum in Latin means an open space, an outdoor meeting. And the obvious place to build this forum is in a natural valley right in the middle of the centre of Rome. So that means it's protected around the outside and it's easily accessible for everybody as well. So this area was really swampy, it was really marshy. So in the year 616 BC, they built a drainage system called the Cloaca Maxima, which drained this whole area out into the Tiber River so they could start building. That drain, by the way, is still working underneath the forum nowadays. So they managed to drain it, and then they start to build wooden huts, then everything gets built out of brick and concrete, everything gets covered with marble. Again, all the marble is gone. If you'd like to see the marble from the forum, you need to go to the back of it. It's basically a strip the forum, record the marble. So, the Roman Forum was basically the city centre of ancient Rome, just like a city centre is nowadays, where you go to hang out with your family, you go to the bank, you do your shopping. It's the political centre, the centre of justice. All those important buildings that you find in any town centre used to find in the Roman Forum, right up until about the 5th century AD. That's the fall of Rome. Now basically what happens in a nutshell is the empire just gets really, really, really big. And to maintain that size empire, you need a lot of money, a lot of military, a lot of power. You can only hold that position for so long. You start to get groups of barbarians, bandits, basically rebelling, kind of fighting back, and working their way down towards Rome. So eventually, in the year 410 AD, the Visigoths invaded. The Visigoths were the first people to get through the city wall of Rome for over 1,000 years. And they actually came in, sacked Rome for 9 days straight, set fire to the Forum, and fell into the aqueducts. This meant that the city was weakened enough and other groups of barbarians started to attack. And Rome just basically went downhill from there. Now what happens is Rome is not a very nice place to live anymore. The population starts to drop. Whoever's left moves back up to the tops of the hills again for defensive reasons. Rome actually goes full circle. It goes right back to being a shepherd village like it was right at the beginning. That means that all of the valleys, including the Forum, are just abandoned. So what happens here is the drain blocks up. And there's no one here to sort of maintain the area, so the ground level starts to rise. We're not very far from the river just here. The river in ancient times has got the valleys a lot, and the river had a level 6. Over a long enough period of time, we're talking about pretty much 1,000 years, the ground level of the Forum gets higher and higher and higher. It gets all the way up to the level of the road over there, the level of Rome today. That's how you have to go down into the Roman Forum. The level of ancient Rome is a lot lower than the level of modern Rome. They estimate there could be 70% of the ancient Rome still in existence, but they can't excavate most of it because they have to take down everything else. We can't demolish the entire modern city to get to the woods underneath, but you might manage to build 2 metro lines on LPD. They've been trying to build metro C for about 30 years, but every time they dig down, they hit this level and send off voltage stations. Also, you'll see if you look at the map, the metro goes around the outside of the city centre, that's because there's too much actually locally to the metro. So, the other thing about the Forum is this is the Roman Forum. This is the bit that started off when Rome was a shepherd village, but Rome grew at an amazing rate, became this huge cosmopolitan city. Second century, huge place. You need more than just this section. So over the years, various people such as Caesar, Augustus, Trajan, Nerva built on their own little forums, extensions, which mainly went out in that direction, which is why if you go out of here and cross over that road, you'll see more rubble columns, excavations on the other side. That's what they call the imperial forums, these extensions. So at one point there were 7 forums, but they're all linked. It was a huge city centre area, which you'd still have quite a good idea of today had it not been for the fact that in the 1920s Mussolini wanted to make ancient Roman Colosseum and modern Roman. The road managed to actually send up the boards to now we don't get such a good idea of it. Roman Forum though was the true centre of Rome, so this was the most important one. And nowadays you've got about 10% of the history of the original Forum, so of what's left, these are the top buildings. So what we're going to do is go on to the little bit that sticks out. Now then, starting from the right, you've got a huge building with the huge arches. You should all be able to see that one. Massive building, especially when you think that's only 1/3 of the original size of that building. It actually used to come out 2/3 in this direction. 2/3 of it fell down in the same earthquake which knocked down most of the Colosseum in 1348. Again, it's the south side where the sun moves around, that is where the British weak is. So in the earthquake, it's the south side that drops. So you can compare that to the Colosseum and see the same section is missing. Now that was all built at the beginning of the 4th century AD by Emperor Palantine, and it's called the Basilica of Constantine. It was very lavishly decorated with different coloured marbles, bronze in the arches there, big white columns, and it was used as a shopping centre. There were little stalls in there that sold things from all over the empire, so that is where you went to do your shopping. As well as little stalls, Constantine also cunningly managed to incorporate a huge 49-foot statue of himself enthroned, which sat at one end, so it was the first thing everybody saw when they walked in. There's not a lot of that statue left, but if you go to either the Capitoline museums on the Capitoline Hill, or if you go to any postcard stall in Rome and you see a picture of a big white marble head, a big marble finger and a big marble foot. Those are the 3 sections from that basilica which have survived. Now, moving to the left of that, straight opposite, can you see that small circular temple with green bronze doors? Okay, tiny little thing. Small circular temple which is called the Temple of Romulus. Not Romulus, the founder of Rome, Romulus who was the infant son of Emperor Maxentius, who actually died when he was 6 years old. So they made him into a god, they built him a temple, which is this one. So the temple dates from 308 AD. Those green bronze doors are the original doors from 308 AD. They have the original lock, the original key, and it still works perfectly as well. They'll open it up sometimes. So the temple is looking actually in pretty good condition, considering how old it is. As is the one to the left of it with the big white columns across the front, huge temple from the 2nd century AD. So you actually have 2 temples, the only 2 original buildings from the original Forum which are still standing and still looking really good. Does anybody know or want to guess why those 2 have managed to survive?
Religious?
Sorry?
Religious?
Very good, they're churches. Okay, now this is very easy. If you go around anywhere in Rome and you see anything from ancient times which looks fantastic, you can bet all your money that it was once made into a church, because it means that it's been looked after, it's been maintained. Normally they would have stripped those doors and those columns and recycled them to use a church somewhere else. Here they just converted the building, which is why it's still standing. Best example of this, by the way, is the Pantheon. The Pantheon was made into a church in 606 AD. It's the best preserved Roman temple in the world because of that. So same idea down here, you can see the difference it made. Okay. There is another building which is still standing, which is in the top left corner over there. There's that tall brown brick building looking pretty complete with the metal crisscross windows. That's still standing, firstly because it was made into a church, and secondly because that's a reconstruction that was done in 1935, so that's why it looks good. That is actually a reconstruction of the Senate House, the Curia. That is where the Senate meetings went on between 250 and 410 AD. Now, a lot of people come to Rome, they find out that's the Senate House, and they go, Julius Caesar, he was killed on the steps of the Senate House. I've seen people reenacting the death of the Caesar on the steps down there. And there are 2 problems with this. The first problem is that that Senate House was built in 250 AD and Julius Caesar was killed in 44 BC. So it's 300 years too late before you start. Second very big problem is the fact that Caesar was not assassinated anywhere near the Roman Forum. Now this has got a little mixed up over the years because the Senate House traditionally was in the Forum. But at the time Caesar it had been burnt down, because whenever there was a riot or a protest in ancient Rome, they just burnt down the Senate House, so it got burnt down and rebuilt many times. So time of Caesar, no Senate House, they had to use theatres, auditoriums around the rest of the city. So on the Ides of March, 15th March, 44 BC, they were using a theatre called the Theatre of Pompey, which actually doesn't exist anymore, but if you go sort of back into the centre of Rome, near the Pantheon, there's a place called Lago Argentina, where you've got a big archaeological site in the middle of the road, a lot of cats, because it's Rome's cat sanctuary. That is actually more or less where the front of the Theatre of Pompey would have been. So that is pretty much the area where Caesar was when he was killed. But they brought his body back through the Forum for the funeral, for the speeches, for the cremation, so that, along with the help of Shakespeare, we've got it wrong. It means that everybody now thinks Caesar was killed down here, but it's not true. There is another section to have a look at, which I know if you're at the back you're going to struggle to see, so have a look afterwards, because it's right at the foot of the hill here. There is a little garden area with ponds and white steps up around the outside. Okay. Right this one on the Palantine is where you have the house of the Vestal Virgins. Now, the Vestal Virgins were recruited to look after the flame of Vesta. Now, Vesta was the goddess of the hearth and of the home. There was this idea of keeping an eternal flame burning to Vesta. So, to make sure that flame never went out, they got the 6 most gorgeous young girls, put them in a little house down there. It was their job just to keep the flame alive. Vestal virgins were recruited between the ages of 6 and 10, and they had to serve for 30 years. After 30 years, they could leave the cult, get married, have children if they wanted to, but the average age of death for women at that point was 45, so if you do the maths, didn't have a lot of time left to have much fun. So, big question, why would you want to be a Vestal virgin? Well, women in ancient Rome were third-class citizens. They were lower than slaves. They actually had a horrible time. They were barely allowed to leave the house. Vestal virgins, on the other hand, were first-class citizens. They got to ride in chariots, they could own land, they got the best seats at the Colosseum, they had a sacred divine power, they were rich women, kind of worth it. Now, in return for all those perks, of course, they had to keep their vow of chastity. Do you all know what happened if they didn't keep the vow? Buried alive. Yeah, they were buried alive because it was sacrilegious to shed the blood of a Vestal virgin. So, what they would actually do is drive down here to the Forum and they would collect her in her own funeral procession, drive her outside the city walls to the Field of the Wicked. There they would dig a big pit and put her in that pit with some bread, some water and an oil lamp, but she would be advised not to eat the bread or drink the water because that would just prolong her death. They then covered it over on top with a big slab of marble and they left her there for 60 days. After 60 days, they went back to have a look, and if she was alive, it meant the gods had forgiven her and she could come back to being a Vestal virgin. How many do you think they found still alive after 60 days?
Not many.
Not one ever. However, it didn't happen very often. It was actually documented that 6 Vestal virgins were buried alive in the course of 1100 years of history, so it wasn't a frequent thing that was going on. The man, on the other hand, though, he had to be humiliated. So they would bring him right into the middle of the Roman Forum, the Forum Square, and he was actually publicly whipped with chains until death. So good Saturday afternoon entertainment. You could all come down to watch that. Now, one last thing about this is that the eternal flame is still burning. It's not in the Forum anymore, but if you go to the other side of that big white building with the chariots on top, that's the Victor Emmanuel Monument, the monument to the unification of Italy. It was built at the end of the 1800s. On the front of that building there are 2 flames. One is the tomb of the unknown soldier, the other is the eternal flame of Rome. I always think of this as a bit of a sign of the times, but it used to be looked after by the 6 most gorgeous girls in Rome. It's now looked after by 2 members of the Italian military with machine guns, so it's a bit different. Now, the other last thing to mention about the Forum, just to emphasise how important this place was, is at the other end of the Forum there used to stand something called the Malarium. That was the golden milestone. It was a golden column on which were written all the distances to all the other major cities of the empire. Still today, when you go around certain countries that were conquered by Rome, for example England, you can occasionally find little milestones on the side of the road with the distances on them to Rome. Not just the distance to Rome, they used to measure the exact distance from that spot to where the Malarium stood in the road before. That was the measuring point. So when they said all roads lead to Rome, everything actually did used to come and converge down in this valley. So really, really important place. If you guys would like to have a closer look, if you exit the way that I told you, so just go left and then left down the steps, it'll bring you out by the arch at that end, that's the Arch of Titus. If you want to, you can actually follow the Forum by the road and you end up at the other end, you can exit up by Piazza Venezia. So if you're going that way, it's quite a good way of passing through. The Forum's free though, it's open every day, so anytime you sort of want to wander in there, you can have a look. I have a couple of other things to say and then you're all free to go and I will run down and do this all over again. There are a couple of reasons why we do the second part of the tour after the Colosseum. First one is to show you some of the other things in the area, because there's a lot of people come to Rome, go to the Colosseum and then leave, because thanks to Russell Crowe, that's what everybody knows and what everyone wants to do. The thing is, in ancient times, the Palantine and the Forum were actually much, much more important than the Colosseum. So just to show you some of the other things in this area. It's also to show you if you decide you want to go on any of the other tours and what's in the brochure is not necessarily with the crazy Italian man from the Colosseum. He doesn't do that, so don't be afraid to show up. The rest of us, we're all native English speakers, we do the other tours in this brochure. So we do a nice evening tour which goes to 6 o'clock, which goes from the front of that white building, past the Trevi Fountain, the Pantheon, Piazza Navona, while it's all lit up, basically take you around the back streets, tell you about that's sort of hidden side of Rome. We also do a tour of the back of the catacombs. There's one of those today. The catacombs tour goes at 2:30 from the exit of the Colosseum, and that goes basically through the Circus Maximus, the Mouth of Truth, underground Indiana Jones style to the Christian catacombs, and then back up and go to see the Michelangelo Moses. And also we do tours of the Vatican. On that note, there's a tour tomorrow which starts at 9:30. I'm doing that tour tomorrow, so if anyone wants to come, you know sort of what to expect now. Tomorrow is Wednesday, it's Pope Day, so very exciting. We actually get together at 9:30, go down to the papal audience, watch the Pope come out, give him a little wave, take a few pictures. You don't stay for the whole audience because it goes on for a long time. So we go for about 15-20 minutes and then we meet up and we go and do the rest of the tour. So we go through the main parts of the museums. We don't do everything in the Vatican Museum because somebody once calculated if you look at everything in there for 1 minute, we'll be there for 12.5 years. So we go for a couple of hours through the main route, through the museums, the best bits, things that are in your guidebooks, things that are in the stories, things you really need to see. through the Sistine Chapel, of course, and also to St. Peter's Basilica. So if you'd like to do everything you sort of need to do at the Vatican and see Pope Benedict XVI, all before sort of lunchtime tomorrow, it's quite a good way of getting it done. On that tour as well, you'll have little headphones, I have a little microphone. We just sort of stroll through and I'll tell you stuff as we wander through. As with all the tours in here, you don't need to book or reserve for this, you just show up at the time and the place. There's usually someone there about 15 minutes before the meeting time, which is in here, and they'll just be standing there holding up a little blue flyer or blue sign, looking a bit stupid on their own, like this, and you just go up and tell them what you want to do. If anybody has any questions, please stay behind, let me know. Anybody doesn't have a brochure and would like one, please let me know, I have a lot in my bag. And one last thing to say is that tips are accepted, very much appreciated, not really. The best thing you will do is come and have another tour. Thank you all very much for listening, everybody, and have a great time here. Thank you.